All right, so my name is Mark Westbrook. Hey guys, so I was the lucky guy that decided, hey, I'll go ahead and share first. So what I'm going to be looking at, or the article I found, is a look at Dehumanized or Inhuman, Doubles and Edward Bond by Deborah A. Castillo. I left a link to the article above this, and if you have to, you should be able to use just your login to Emporia, and it should allow you to download the PDF for it. I had a difficult time finding out how to get PDF files onto the website an easy way, except by using a link. So maybe later on you guys might find another way. But for me, that seemed like the best thing to do. But don't worry, if anything, I'm going to summarize it for you. So, uh, what was this article about? Well, I like to start by looking at her main argument. She looks at three plays. There's Lear, Saved, which is the play that we read, and then also Early Morning in 1965. Now, I tried looking for a summary of Lear and Early Morning as well as the play themselves. I even thought about getting and buying the plays, but the Kindle version alone of Lear, or I think it was Early Morning, was $20. And I think they only had paperback available for Lear, and that was like 25, $30. So I wanted to do a great job, but I wasn't really about spending $50. So sorry if I don't have those summaries. But what I'll mainly be focusing on is her involvement of Saved in this argument that has. And well, what is her argument? Well, her argument is kind of I cut and pasted from two main sections of the article, and they're both on the first page. And that is where traditional fables of Aesop use animals to demonstrate human foibles, weakness, I had to look that up. Bond's modern fables utilize a similar, if more subtle, versions of this technique by surrounding characters with images of dehumanization or metaphors connecting them to animals. And through this, he deconstructs dominant myths of perceptions of conventions and ideologies and the controlled application of a few carefully chosen images. So if you're like me, you read this thesis and you're like, what is she trying to get at? Well, don't worry. I'm going to tell you. So basically, this is it. Man is an animal. So we're a bunch of caged beasts because of society, and we're animals because of our natural instincts, just waiting to get out to be individuals. We see this reference, or at least Costello tries to make this reference by pointing out how Bond makes tons of connections of how humans call each other as animals. For instance, if you take a look here, Harry is a nose gander who lives in the sty. Women are called birds throughout the play. Pigs or cows. There are yellow, I'm not going to say that word, who were dismembered with a pig sticker, so those were treated like pigs. Lynn and Fred's mutual courtship of Pam is discussed in a fishing boat with how to bait a hook. The ultimate victim of the workers' pinup violence, Pam's baby, is never given a human identity. So again, he's like an animal, not a true human being with an individuality. Also, when the baby cries, it's defined as a cat stuck up in a chimney. Pam refers to the baby as a that. Barry, when they're about to kill the baby, sings a chilling version of the lullaby, and in which the baby's brains can be used for bait, kind of like how you'd use a worm for bait or chicken guts for bait. So again, the baby itself is just being something that's seen like an animal that can be used for bait. The child is seen as an animal that can't be hurt because it's too young and it doesn't have feelings. Plus, again, it refers back to, again, that, which again is seen as animalistic. And because it's killed with a pig sticker. And then finally, as they begin to stone the child, Mike Muckling suggests calling the RSPCA, which is basically like animal cruelty. And there was one other thing that Costello doesn't mention that I thought was interesting, was that when Fred's in prison, he mentions that if it was like an animal or another cat that he had killed, this wasn't that big of a deal. And And that, in my mind, kind of showed again that the baby was just another animal. What's the big deal about it? So we're going to get to that. That's kind of the big thesis of it. But there's some repercussions of this idea of man being an animal that Bond really wanted to try and get across to people. And that was that when men are deprived of this animalistic individuality, that we are basically caged and we need to release this rage of repression through violence or sexual activity. So the main way that men are deprived of this individuality is basic slash animalistic or true native instinct is through the industrial line slash technology. There's the church, and then also there's language. There's something a little bit funny about language, and we'll get to that close to the end of the presentation. And by the way, yes, since we're talking about men being caged through these three things throughout this presentation, I have filled it with sad photos of caged kittens. So don't get too distracted. All right, so first is the industrial line. It's the monotonous job. It's basically the destroyer of the human soul. I kind of also want to put in there the destroyer of the human individual. This is mainly shown through Fred and Lynn and their hate, their dislike of their jobs, that they don't even want to talk about it. It's not even a part of their lives. It's taken over their lives, so they don't even want to talk about it. But one thing is that she felt Bond was trying to get across in this play is that we don't control the machines, like we don't create technology to benefit from now. It's because we're working at these industrial lines that we're doing the same thing over and over, that technology has now controlled us. It has taken away our individuality. Again, Fred and Lynn, we see this in the play because Fred and Lynn do not want to talk about their jobs. We never see them at their jobs. It's obvious they hate their jobs. There's all of the industrial. It's the destruction of the individual, again, up here in the title. It's basically the idea is that since it's well, I'll tell you what, let's just read the quote. I think Bond does an amazing job saying this. He says, "It does not matter how much a man is doing routine work in, say, a factory or office, how much he is paid, he will still be deprived. Because he is behaving in a way for which he is not designed, he is alienated from his natural self, and this will have physical and emotional consequences for him." So again, because we're doing a routine work over and over again, say working in a Taco Bell fast food line or working in a McDonald's line, doing the same thing over and over again, and we're doing the same thing as the guy next to us and the other guy next to us, that we're just a machine, we're not a human. And so basically our existence is almost pointless because our individuality is wiped out. So that's the individual. That's almost like the human soul that's being destroyed because of the industrial line. But then the church is the destroyer of the body, or at least in a sense that it makes the human hate their body. But in the play, Saved, which is kind of ironic because they're not really saved through the church. It's actually one of the things that hurts them. The church is seen only as an easy pickup. As they're about to stone the baby, they talk about, hey, there's this church over there, but they don't talk about going over there because they want to be saved and find Jesus. They go there because they can easily find women to be with, to have sexual interactions with. The church, the reason why it's to destroy the body is because the church sets society norms. It takes away the animal instinct through the laws that it creates. It restricts us. It doesn't allow us to be free. In fact, the church tells us, if we go back, it tells us that it's good to be working at these factories, to not say anything, to just do as we're told. And so what happens is that when people go to work and they're not happy with their life because of work, well, then they go to church and the church tells them what they don't want to hear. And that is that the industry is is that they need to be happy with the industry. And so the church really doesn't provide any answers to their unhappiness in life and how to find their individuality again. And not only that, it also tells men that their lives are pointless pointless since their bodies will not last. So there's no point in exercising. There's no point in trying to take care of yourself. There's no point in saving because your body is something that's will rot and die away, and there's no point. And then not only that, it teaches us to hate our bodies because satisfying any physical desires is seen as bad, and so and or through greed or anything else. And so we are forced to believe that our bodies themselves are just horrible. So now we don't have any individuality. We have a hatred of our own body. We can't find any answers. So what's the third thing? What's the cause of all this? Well, here's the big third thing. And this is what kind of created the church in the industrial line. And I would say I kind of wanted to combine this with the church, but I decided to make it separate, and that's language. It's the creator of the destroyers. The one thing that separates us from animals is because of our language, our ability to reason. However, it's this language that does two things that has destroyed us physically and our individuality. And first, that is, we create a mask using language that hides the animal behind it. I can be feeling something on the inside, but what I say to everybody else is different from what I say from the inside. I may have these animalistic desires, these instincts, but I go around and pretend and say stuff, and you can never tell that I had those desires and instincts. And we have trained ourselves not to really fully express those instincts and those desires. Another thing that language has caused that hurts us is, well, I thought this equation was the best way I could summarize it. It was like a whole long page on page, I think 87 of the, 87 of the article. And that's basically because of language, we get to talking, we start talking about life. But then as we start talking about life, we start wondering where we come from. That talk leads to sovereignty of God. And then that talk of sovereignty of God leads to basically a creation of laws / the Bible. And again, those laws, those Bibles is one of the things that oppress us and has created an oppression by society. But again, this is kind of a double-edged sword, and it's a little ironic, and I'll show you here in a bit. But what are the negative outcomes of these three things? Language, the church, the industry / technology. Well, that we see the results of that through Fred. And I think this caged cat, does his best job of summarizing Fred, for those of you who need some visual imagery. Fred is a caged beast. He doesn't know how to express his happiness. And also one thing that Costello tries to get across is that because he doesn't realize his repressed feelings, he doesn't know the reasons for his unhappiness. He doesn't know who to take it out on. And so he basically takes it out on random scapegoats, which is basically an innocent baby and women that he's with, and like his treatment of Pam. Also, another thing that Costello gets across is that until he realizes why he's repressed, until he realizes, oh, the reason I'm unhappy is because of my job, and the reason I'm unhappy is because I can't find any satisfaction in my life, his violence will continue. He doesn't know why he's unhappy, so he's going to be violent to the baby. And then as we see, he comes back. We think he's a changed man, but Bond tries to show, no, the prison's not going to change it because he's still repressed by society. And so he will continue to be violent, as we see with his treatment in Pam. The only way that Fred will possibly change is if he finds a way to express his thoughts and his repressions through language, which leads me on to the next slide. So the solution for Fred, and that we kind of see in Lynn, is language. Now, yes, language was the thing that caused the creation of technology through reasoning. It's also what leads through the creation of the church. But through language, it is by way in which we can free ourselves, because we can speak and voice the problems and speak the truth and find reason And by doing that, we find our individuality. Through language, through creation, we can create, like this is taken from Bond, from an interview. He says, by rational means, that means writing plays, that means teaching, that means discussion, that means persuading, that means caring. Through these means, which is through the use of language, we can find our individuality, and we can find a non-violent way to release that caged beast. So a way that we kind of see this in Saved is how Lynn fixed the chair. If you read the prior to it, the prior to the play, it says that Bond says that it's a very optimistic ending to the play, even though you're kind of like left wondering, wait, what's going on here? How is this an optimistic ending? It seems like it's only a negative ending because they're still all unhappy, and this guy's Lynn's just fixing a chair. How's this positive? Well, the reason why it's positive is because Lynn is looking to fix the chair, and that's kind of symbolizing that he is looking to use reason, to be useful, like it says, to be caring. And by doing this, he is going to no longer be repressed, but he is finding his individual purpose in life. And that is being around Pam's family and being useful. And that's why he doesn't leave, because he's found his individuality. He feels like he's found his purpose. And hopefully through that, he helps Pam and her family. And we kind of see a sense of that when he talks with the father. He will hopefully help them find their own individuality and allow them to no longer be repressed by society. So we're supposed to talk about how this author Costello, how they go about, what approach they use. And I had to basically pull up a chart because I really didn't know if this was a postmodernist or a modernist. Parts of it felt like a postmodernist, but then I basically ended it down to, yeah, she's approaching this from a modernist approach. And these are the three reasons why. First, modernists believe in the self, this idea of the individual that needs to be separate from society. And Costello's whole argument is that Bond is saying we are individuals that need to be freed / uncaged. And there's the page for that. The other big thing is that women are oppressed by patriarchy. So this is a postmodern feminist view. And again, that's women are oppressed by patriarchy or by men. And she says that she sees that Fred uses his sexuality as a weapon for the victimization of female bodies. Another big thing that led me to believe this was monergistic approach was that she outlays that using language, reason is obtainable, and it is the answer to declaring truth. And in a modernistic view, reason is obtainable, while in the postmodern view, reason's really more of an abstract idea that it kind of depends on the person. For this, we can use language and reason to discover truths, to reach individuality. So those are the three main reasons why I feel like this was a modernistic approach. But then the big thing is, though, is how does this article affect this course? And I'm actually going to combine this with the third point. We're supposed to ask, how can we connect this to other plays that we've looked at or will look at? And I'm going to combine those. Really, after reading this, I was like, oh my goodness, this article could have been used not only over Saved, but every single character almost in all the other plays we've read. And here's just some. I think the only one I didn't do was Barley and Oats. But for Look Back in Anger, Jimmy is just another Fred that takes anger on Allison. He hates his job. He feels like he's not an individual. He feels like he's not recognized. He wants to feel like an individual, but no one recognizes that. He tries to do that by playing the trumpet. That was how he got his release for being a caged animal, was the trumpet. But basically, as soon as he can't play the trumpet, he's not playing the band anymore. He starts getting this pent-up anger, and that's who he takes on. He takes that out on Allison because he doesn't know who else to take it on. He can't take it out on the church. He can't take it out on the industry because he just can't. So he has to take it on Allison. Also, Helena. She's another character. You don't see her as a caged beast, But in Act 3 or close to the end of Act 2, you see her just suddenly release that sexual tension she's holding the whole time. We recognize that she's not happy with her life. You think that she's happy because she's going through the church. She goes to church, but you see that her individual need, her feeling of individuality is not met through the church. So she still feels like a caged beast, and she only feels actually free when she's with Jimmy. And then also, again, she feels like the answer to feeling like a free caged animal is by having sexual relations with Jimmy. With Sloan, entertaining Mr. Sloan, Sloan murders his boss, and Clint is just kind of boom. It's just like that. He doesn't really have a reason. He just seems to be upset at Clint. There's no real reasoning of why he does it. Also, Kath's use of sexual lashing out on Fred. Again, she's unhappy. And so, unlike a violent lashing out, she uses a sexual lashing out on Fred to try and kind of release that inner caged beast. And A Taste of Honey, Helen, oh boy, Helen gets back and she just tears Geoff apart. She just totally hates the guy. And it's probably because she got back from Peter, who abused her, and things weren't working out. And so she couldn't find happiness there. She didn't feel like an individual. She didn't feel like she had any purpose. And so she didn't really fulfill that natural instinct. And so she lashes out Geoff. In The Deep Blue Sea, the church provides no answers, only repression. Hester is basically an atheist. And so is the doctor. I can't remember his name. But basically, he tells her there is no point, and once you've accepted that, you'll be happier. I think that kind of theme goes along with what Costell's going on with here. Also, Hester receives no recognition of her existence. She doesn't feel like an individual. She feels like another machine. She can't find any answers through her sexual actions with her late husband, which is why she goes. And so she thinks like, I can fulfill that with my new boyfriend. But again, that doesn't work. And so because she feels unhappy, because she's repressed, she has no other option. But unlike the other characters who are violent against just poor scapegoats, she uses violence against herself by trying to commit suicide. However, unlike the other characters in all these plays, Hester is kind of like a Lynch. She actually might have hope because she finds her release, her recognition of individuality through her art. And like what you see at the end of the play there, she kind of just is going to go back to hopefully painting. We hopefully hope that will be her salvation, is through her art. So that's basically what this article was about, why it was important. Again, the three things that repress men: the church, industry, and also language being used to create those. And also that man is just a caged animal because of these industries, these institutions. And Bond really just, through the use, like he did himself, through the use of language, through the use of art, he found his individuality. And he also was able to fight back against these institutions without attacking a poor, harmless scapegoat. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this idea of the caged animal lashing out will play across through future plays that we read, and I hope that you look forward to it. I'll leave a link in the discussion for any discussion topics. And so that's it. Hope you guys have a good day, and hope you guys had a fun time reading Save just like I did.